When a peaceful homeowner stood up to his HOA, he never imagined it would spark a neighborhood-wide collapse. They called it a simple flood risk. What they unleashed was nature's revenge. For generations, a natural spring flowed gently across Michael Carter's property in Cascade Heights. It wasn't just water. It was his family's legacy, a source of life for wildlife, a cooling presence during summer, and a symbol of the land's quiet beauty. Until one day, everything changed. Scene: kitchen table, emotional moment with family. They can't take your water. Sarah yelled, slamming a notice on the table. Michael picked up the paper with trembling hands. His heart dropped. The Cascade Heights HOA had declared his spring a flood hazard. He had 30 days to shut it down or face $500 daily fines. Cut TO, HOA meeting, dramatic lighting, voiceover commentary. At the emergency HOA meeting, Michael came armed with history, photos of the spring through decades, and a petition signed by neighbors who loved it. But Victoria Reed, the new HOA president, had other plans. 6 months ago, she called it an eyesore. Now, she waved a thick geological report, claiming the spring endangered property foundations. Michael stood. That spring's been here for a century without a single flood. But Victoria pushed back. Water tables shift. Sentiment can't replace safety. The room split. Some nodded in support. Others looked afraid of rising insurance, falling property values. Even Martha, his friendly neighbor, voted with the board. Reveal corruption angle. That's when Michael connected the dots. Victoria didn't care about floods. She cared about land. Her developer friends wanted his property, and driving down its value was step one. He demanded to see the report. Victoria refused, claiming it was confidential. That's when Mr. Peterson, a retired lawyer, spoke up. That's not how assessments work. The homeowner has a right to review any report on their land. Still, the motion passed. The board voted to remove the spring. Middle tone, late night trespassing, rising tension. 2 nights later, Michael woke at 2 a.m. trucks. Men with gear near his spring. He rushed out, heart pounding. This is private property. Marcus, the HOA maintenance manager, replied coldly, "We're authorized. Board business." Victoria stepped from the shadows, clipboard in hand. "Safety inspections are allowed at any hour. It's in your contract." But this wasn't an inspection. It was a setup, the discovery, uncovering the truth. Desperate, Michael dug into county records. The truth he found was explosive. The geological survey, conducted by Victoria's brother-in-law, whose license had been suspended for falsifying reports. Worse yet, the spring sat on a historic watershed system, a natural pressure valve for the area's underground aquifer. Blocking it could spell disaster. Fighting back, grassroots movement. Michael launched a website, exposing the truth with documents, photos, and testimonies. He shared it on the neighborhood Facebook group. The reaction was immediate. Longtime residents spoke up. One woman, Mrs. Henderson, dropped a bombshell. "That spring saved us during the 1978 drought. We got our drinking water from it when city supply failed." The tide was turning, but Victoria wasn't done. Retaliation, escalation, and sabotage. Michael got an anonymous call. "Drop the website, or you'll regret it." Then, at dawn, the roar of machines. Victoria had brought in industrial pumps. With an emergency court order, she began draining the spring. Michael stood helpless as his family's legacy vanished. Ducks scattered. 100-year-old willows began to wilt. Sarah filmed everything. "This is criminal," she said, tears in her voice. Marcus ordered her to stop. "This is private HOA business." "This is my land," Michael shot back. "That's our spring you're destroying." By noon, the spring was gone. In its place, cracked earth and a deep, aching silence. The aftermath, the beginning of collapse. That evening, Michael met with Sam, a hydrologist from college. Sam examined the property, alarmed. This isn't just a spring. It's a safety valve. Without it, the water is going to find a new path. Into homes, into basements, into disaster. After Sam compiled his data, I shared the findings on our neighborhood Facebook group. Within hours, the comment section exploded. My sump pump hasn't stopped in days. There's a spring bubbling up in my backyard now. My foundation guy says it could cost $50,000 to fix. The truth was impossible to ignore. Property values nosedived. 3 homes at the market. Fast. Local reporters came back with cameras rolling. This time the headlines were brutal. HOA's decision turns neighborhood into a flood zone. Victoria panicked. She tried to blame the city, the weather, climate change, anything but her own choices. At one point, she even accused me of sabotaging the drainage system. It would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. But the real blow came from Mr. Peterson, the retired lawyer who lived 3 doors down. Follow the money, he said one morning over coffee. And we did. Turns out Victoria's brother-in-law, the same man who wrote the bogus geological report, owned a drainage company. The same one contracted for $2 million to fix the very problems created by draining the spring. It was corruption in plain sight. I filed a formal complaint with the state attorney general. Investigators swarmed in within days, subpoenaing HOA financial records, interviewing board members, and documenting the spreading water damage. Victoria tried to resign quietly, but the neighborhood demanded a public meeting. The school auditorium was packed, standing room only. Homeowners waved flooded basement estimates, snapped photos of cracked walls, and held signs like "Where's our water now, Victoria?" When she finally took the microphone, the boos nearly drowned her out. She stammered something about good intentions and unforeseen consequences. No one believed her. Then I dropped the bombshell. Sarah had kept filming the day they drained the spring. And in one clip, barely audible in the background, Victoria's voice could be heard, telling Marcus, "Once property values drop, my developer friends will buy up the whole block. We'll all make millions." The room erupted. People screamed for her arrest. Several board members resigned on the spot. Even Martha stood up, publicly apologizing and admitting that Victoria had promised to permit approvals in exchange for support. That same night, state investigators took Victoria into custody. She was charged with fraud, conspiracy, and misusing HOA funds. Her brother-in-law's company collapsed. The developer's scheme fell apart. But the damage was already done. Basements were still flooding. Insurance companies labeled it a man-made disaster and denied coverage. Homeowners were left staring down financial ruin. Eventually, we got a federal disaster declaration. Engineers spent months reconstructing the natural water flow. My spring was rebuilt, but it'll take years to recover fully. The total cost? Over $10 million, most of it paid through C's HOA assets and the association's insurance. Victoria got 15 years in prison. Martha, redeemed and resolute, now leads a reformed HOA that prioritizes environmental sustainability. Where the spring once flowed quietly, she's planted a memorial garden and teaches local kids about the importance of respecting nature. As for me, I learned something profound. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come through court battles or shouting matches. Sometimes, nature itself delivers justice. Because water always finds its way, and so does the truth. But just when I thought it was over, a loud knock shook me awake at 3:27 a.m. It was Bill, my neighbor from up the hill, soaked, frantic, out of breath. "It's everywhere," he gasped. 3 inches in my basement. Everything's underwater. That didn't make sense. Bill's home sat uphill from mine. Water shouldn't flow that way, unless... The next morning, I was back at the county records office. Hours passed, my fingers blackened with dust from old map files. I needed answers. And then I found it. A 1952 geological survey. Cascade Heights wasn't just built over a spring. It was perched atop an ancient, interconnected water channel network. My spring had been the critical release valve, the thing keeping everything in balance. Without it, nature was still trying to correct our mistake. And this time, the whole neighborhood might pay the price. By capping the spring, Victoria hadn't just disrupted a patch of nature. She turned our neighborhood into a pressure cooker. At home, I called Sam, my old friend from college, now a hydrologist. After reviewing my notes, his voice was grim. "You're sitting on a water bomb," he said. That spring was a pressure valve. Block it, and water finds its way, usually through people's homes. I needed proof. With a borrowed ground-penetrating radar, I mapped the underground water flow beneath our streets. The data was terrifying. Water pressure had doubled in just 2 weeks. If it kept rising, half the neighborhood would be underwater by spring. At the next HOA meeting, tensions were high. Residents complained about flooded basements, cracked driveways, and sinking lawns. Victoria sat at the front, immaculate in a designer suit, flipping papers like nothing was wrong. "These are isolated incidents," she insisted. "Our drainage expert gave full clearance." I stood up. "Your expert never even visited the site," I said, holding up an old geological survey. "This proves our spring was essential for managing groundwater." Martha leapt to Victoria's defense. "She's increased property values by 20%. Why should we trust you?" Murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. That's when I realized Victoria had bought loyalty with empty promises. "Ask yourselves," I continued, "why was this rushed through? Why were consultants hired without inspections? Why ignore decades of natural balance?" Victoria's smile faltered. "Motion to adjourn." "Wait," Bill interrupted. "My insurance adjuster says the flooding from disrupted groundwater. They won't pay a dime." The room erupted into chaos. Later, outside the building, Sam pulled me aside. "There's something else," he whispered. "The drainage company, it's owned by Victoria's brother-in-law. She's getting kickbacks." "Can you prove it?" "I'm working on it. But be careful. She has friends in high places." That night, I installed security cameras around my house. I was right to be cautious. At midnight, someone tried tampering with my water meter. He wore a hoodie, but I recognized him, Marcus, the HOA's maintenance manager. He was trying to frame me for the flooding. I backed up the footage 3 times. And just in time, because things were about to explode. More homes flooded. The community pool cracked under pressure. Even Victoria's closest allies began questioning her decisions. I dug into water rights laws, combed through state codes. I discovered multiple violations, permits never filed, environmental protocols ignored. At the library, I found something chilling. Victoria had resigned from a previous HOA after financial irregularities. The pattern was unmistakable. Then one rainy afternoon, Martha showed up at my door. Her mascara was smeared, her garden destroyed. She promised this wouldn't happen, she said, eyes filling with tears. And she promised me a board seat, extra voting power. I feel like a fool. I showed her my research. Her face changed with every page. "She's been playing all of us," she whispered. "I have emails." That was a turning point. Together, Martha and I built a case. More neighbors came forward. Stories of bribes, threats, secret deals. Victoria had turned the HOA into her personal piggy bank. I submitted everything to the Department of Environmental Protection. State investigators finally arrived. They took soil samples, mapped the aquifer, interviewed residents. Victoria scrambled to do damage control, hosting wine and cheese nights, spinning tales of necessary progress. But fewer people showed up each time. Then, late one night, Martha brought me a folder of borrowed financials. And there it was, the smoking gun. Payments to the drainage company matched precisely with mysterious deposits into an account under VR Consulting, Victoria's shell company. I had her. The next morning, I found a cease and desist letter in my mailbox. Victoria was threatening legal action for defamation, but she was out of time. During an emergency HOA meeting, just as she was denying everything, boom, water burst through her kitchen floor. Her designer tiles cracked. Water sprayed like a geyser toward the ceiling. "Everyone out!" I yelled. Board members tripped over their expensive shoes, scrambling for the exits. Victoria stood frozen, watching granite countertops fracture under the pressure she had caused. "This is impossible," she whispered. But I knew better. The aquifer had finally broken through, directly beneath the woman who tried to bury it. News vans arrived within minutes. Someone had tipped off Channel 7. "Is it true the HOA president's home just flooded?" a reporter asked, thrusting an MIC toward me. Before I could answer, Victoria burst out, hair soaked and wild-eyed. He did this. It's sabotage. The camera swung to me. I've been warning about this for weeks, I said. Nature doesn't follow HOA rules. That's when Harold, the treasurer who'd stayed silent, stepped forward. Hands shaking, he held up a folder. I can't stay quiet anymore, he said. These are the real financial records. Victoria lunged for them, but Harold backed away. Show page 7, I urged. The room fell silent as Harold flipped to the matching payments. Drainage fund going straight to Victoria's shell company. It's a setup, she screamed. But the evidence was flowing as fast as the water in her house. By that afternoon, state investigators swarmed Cascade Heights. Environmental codes had been violated. HOA negligence documented. Insurance companies denied all claims. Residents were devastated. We trusted her, Bill muttered, staring at his ruined basement. Now we're losing everything. I organized a community meeting at the school gym. It was time to act. We can fix this, I told them, showing a plan for environmental restoration. But we need new leadership, and we need to recover what was stolen. That night, Victoria tried to flee. Security cameras caught her loading boxes into her SUV. The sheriff intercepted her at the county line. Inside the car, HOA laptops, shredded documents. Her mugshot was splashed across every local station. HOA president caught fleeing flood scandal. Her designer blouse was soaked, her reputation shattered. In court, the truth spilled out: years of embezzlement, environmental destruction, and fraud across multiple communities. I testified. So did Martha, Harold, and dozens of residents. In the end, Victoria was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Her assets were seized to fund restoration. It wasn't a perfect ending. Some residents sold their ruined homes. Insurance battles dragged on. But engineers reopened the spring with care, and water began flowing the way nature intended. Martha volunteered to lead the interim board. I helped break this, she said. Now I want to help fix it. And as for me, I kept documenting everything. The story spread. Universities requested my case files. Environmental groups praised our fight. The media called it a classic tale. David versus the HOA Goliath. But for us, it was something simpler. It was a reminder that when you disturb nature for profit, eventually nature pushes back. With the truth finally out, change swept through Cascade Heights like the spring that once fed its soul. Together, we rewrote the rules, literally. New bylaws demanded environmental reviews and full financial transparency. No more shadowy contracts. No more rush destruction disguised as progress. Even through winter's chill, crews stayed busy, laying drainage, stabilizing the soil, and preparing the land for nature's return. The aquifer, fragile and depleted, needed time to heal. But by spring, a cautious hope emerged. Yards dried, homes were repaired, foundations, literal and figurative, were rebuilt. The first trickle of restored water flowed from the spring, and children gathered around it with wide-eyed awe. Their laughter reminded us why we fought so hard, not just to reclaim what was lost, but to protect what should have never been taken. Victoria's empire, once towering and untouchable, now stood waterlogged and broken, like a mansion, like a legacy. But from the wreckage, our community rose stronger, wiser, and finally united. In court, even the ceiling dripped from a still-leaking roof, a poetic reminder of the chaos she'd unleashed. Victoria sat slumped in designer defeat, her polished facade in ruins. Prosecutor, clip, Mrs. Henderson, can you describe what happened after the spring was drained? Martha took the stand, hands trembling, voice cracking. 3 feet of water in my basement, my wedding photos, baby albums, all ruined. The mold came fast. Too fast. Victoria's lawyer objected. Emotional manipulation. The judge was colder than concrete. Your client manipulated an entire neighborhood. Sit down. Then came the unraveling. Martha confessed to being promised a board seat for her silence. Property values would skyrocket. Victoria had said, I trusted her, Martha whispered. She wasn't alone. Evidence stacked like sandbags. Bank record showing shady offshore payments. Geological warnings Victoria ignored 3 times. Her response? I don't pay you for opinions. Even her brother-in-law flipped, revealing kickback schemes and a rigged bidding process. Security footage showed her in a parking garage, accepting a briefcase full of cash. In desperation, she cracked. Victoria, shouting, You're all jealous. I made Cascade Heights. Judge, order in the court. She pointed at me, venomous. This is your fault. You refuse to follow the rules. Rules you wrote to enrich yourself. I shot back. The prosecutor moved in for the final blow. A forensic accountant outlined how Victoria embezzled over $800,000, all disguised as emergency repairs. Outside, the headlines blared. HOA president's greed triggers environmental disaster. Some thanked me, others blamed me, but the truth was out. Then came the smoking gun. An email dated months before my spring was ever a problem. Target the water feature first, Victoria had written. Create a crisis, then sell the solution. 3 hours, that's all the jury needed. Guilty, on all counts. Fraud, embezzlement, environmental destruction, racketeering. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in full restitution. As she was led away, she hissed, I hope you're happy. I met her eyes and said, Not happy, just relieved. But victory came at a cost. Insurance denied claims, calling it a man-made disaster. Families went bankrupt. Some left. The rest stayed to rebuild. Even Marcus, the maintenance manager who helped drain the spring, approached me in shame. She threatened my job. My kid needs surgery. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't forget, but I understood. The damage wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Trust had been broken, and nature betrayed. Then came the call from Sam, our hydrologist. We have 6 months. If we don't restore the spring, the aquifer could collapse and take 3 neighborhoods with it. The clock was ticking.